If anyone watching this is sitting in a negative environment like you were when you were in prison, and in the last video you just said, you were in a pretty negative place, and so you had to learn how to thrive in a negative environment. What are some of the action steps you would suggest to anyone watching, again, on how they could possibly survive or thrive even? Because we don't just want to survive, we want to thrive and we want to develop and grow. How could we do that in what we perceive to be a negative environment?
What I did, the method that I came up with, it was all self-centered, or it was self-focused. So what I mean by that is it forced me to take a look within me and look at the things that I could control. Because prison, you don't have a lot of control over many things. You're told when to get up. You're told when to eat. You're told when to go to bed. So I had to find some things that I did have control over. One of the first things that I had to do was I had to stop making so many excuses for being a failure, because that's what I felt that I was. But in that prison cell, when I can tell you, when that prison cell first closed behind me for the first time in my life, I stood there by myself. My knees got weak and I collapsed and I fell to the floor and I cried alone. But what ended up happening is I thought about all of the negative things that happened in my life. I heard every single voice that said, Ian, you will never amount to much. And I told myself it was their fault that I was in prison. So the first action step that I would say is necessary for anyone is to look within and try to find the things that you have control over and not make any excuses for where you are at that time in your life. And there are a few more. I can go into those too if you like.
If you wouldn't mind, that'd be amazing. Yes.
Of course. So the first thing I had to do was stop making excuses, stop blaming everyone else for where I was in my life. Where I was, that was my fault. And it required me to look myself in the mirror and say, Ian, this is your fault. You got yourself into the situation. You need to figure out a way to get out of it. The next thing that's necessary is, you have to take some chances in your life. I don't know very many successful people that will look at you and say, I've never taken any chances in my life. I always travel the safe path, because I guarantee you that you won't find one. The chance that I had to take was, one, being in prison, taking on a positive attitude in a very negative environment. That was taking a chance because it was going against the grain. So many people there were negative. It's like saying, if we're in a building, Dan, and I know, or in your heart, you saw the exit light when you came into that building, the building catches on fire and everyone else is running the wrong direction. Take the chance, believe in yourself, and head in the direction, go against the grain because it's right. So you have to take some chances. The other thing I had to do was, or I believe someone should do, anyone, is you have to surround yourself with positive people. You have to do this. It is so critical to your personal growth. It is so critical to you being able to rise and lift yourself up off the canvas. You have to find those positive people. You can bounce thoughts off of one another. You can share a strategy. You can share a success plan. And what I did in prison is I formed my own success group. Now, it wasn't very large, but I found the few people that were in that prison who thought like I did, who said, I'm never coming back to this place. If you crack the door, I'm going to leave and I will never return. Because in prison, the recidivism rate is 70%. I mean, 7 out of 10 people will return. So it's very important to surround yourself with people that believe they can succeed and you can succeed, so that you as a group, you're much stronger than any one person, or you're stronger than you are by yourself. So that's the other thing. Surround yourself with positive people. And of course, I believe you have to reach further. So often we get into the habit of just doing just enough. While I was incarcerated, there were certain things I was required to do. But once my whole thought process changed, I started doing more than I was required. In order to for me to be paroled, I knew I needed to do X, Y, and Z. I knew that. But instead of just doing that, I did everything within my power. I took every class that could better myself. I worked in any possible job that I could to increase my skills, and I didn't have to do that. So I believe you have to reach further. That's doing more today than you did yesterday. It's a compound effect, so that each and every day you're getting stronger, you're getting better. I had someone tell me once, Ian, you need to do more than what people pay you to do. And I understand that. It's reaching further, doing more than everyone else is willing to do. And the second to last, is two more, is I do believe you have to talk to yourself. You have to tell yourself all of the things that you wish someone else was telling you. So many times we wait, Dan, for someone else to validate us, to tell us how great we are. And if that person never comes along, then what? So many students that I speak to on a regular basis, they wait for a young man to validate them and tell them how pretty they are. A young man waits for a young girl to tell them how big their muscles are, and they know they don't even go to a gym. But what I tell them is, you have to tell yourself those things, and don't wait for someone to tell you how great you are. Because it doesn't matter what I say to you. If you don't believe it, it's not very effective in the first place. And something else that I say on a regular basis is, I believe that, as long as you talk to yourself, if you say something to yourself over and over again, no matter if it's negative or positive, sooner or later, you'll believe it. And once you believe it, then you will set out to prove it. I believe that I would be incarcerated. I believe that I was going to go to prison at a young age, because that's what people told me. They told me that so much, I believed it. And what did I do? Well, I proved them right. Instead of speaking life into my own, or using my own words and living up to my own expectations. So it is very important to talk to yourself. The last thing I would say to someone who's down and out is, and we've mentioned this a little bit here today, is, when I first made the transition to positive thinking, and when I decided that I was going to be one of the individuals that got out of prison and stayed out, there were some setbacks. There were days when I felt like giving up. There were doors that were slammed in my face because I checked that little box on my application that I was a convicted felon. There were days when I thought to myself, going back to prison would be easier than what I'm dealing with. And there were days when I fought and I contemplated, should I continue to go on? The most important thing that anyone can do is you have to have an unstoppable attitude. Once you set your goal to something, you have to refuse to quit. You may get knocked down, but you have to refuse to stay there. Find a reason to get back up and continue to fight. Stay focused on the goals that you have, because in the end, that's what forces you to get up.